At 0400 hours on a damp Tuesday in June, I prepared to saw through the femur of a 19-year-old boy. My mentor, Dr. Brandt, had swallowed a cyanide pill in Berlin, and my colleague, Hans, had shot himself in the trenches, both certain that an American victory meant the end of civilization. How does a man reconcile the fact that the barbarians at the door carried the keys to life while we, the master race, only carried the tools for mutilation? This was the day my hatred died, not from a bullet, but from a vial of yellow water. I looked at my surgical saw, the finest steel in the world, and then at Lucas, whose leg was rotting with the sweet, sickening stench of the grave. I expected the American paratroopers to burst through the door and finish us both with a burst of lead, because that is what we would have done to them. Instead, a man named Major Julian Rhodes pushed aside my blade and reached for a glass syringe filled with a strange golden liquid. I screamed that he was poisoning the boy out of spite. Yet within 12 hours, the inferior American science did what our genius never could. While we had spent years perfecting the machines of death, they had been busy learning how to grow life in a jar of common mold. I realized then that my ideology was a far deadlier infection than any gangrene. My kit was a masterpiece of Solingen engineering. Every scalpel, every forceps, every clamp was forged from the finest steel in the world. We were told that German genius was the only thing standing between civilization and the chaotic, primitive hordes of the West. I used to believe that. I used to run my thumb along the edge of my amputation saw and feel a sense of absolute certainty. The Americans, my commanders said, were merely lucky. They were a nation of assembly line workers who understood mass production but possessed none of the soul or the intellectual fire of the master race. To us, they were a technological joke. They were children playing with toys they did not deserve.
Doctor, I cannot feel my toes anymore. Is that a good sign?
I looked down at Lucas. He was 19 years old, but in the flickering light of a single tallow candle, he looked 90. He was a farm boy from Bavaria who should have been harvesting wheat, not waiting for a saw to bite into his bone. I squeezed his hand, but his skin felt like cold, wet parchment. You must be still, Lucas. The fever is talking.
It smells like the cider press back home. Why does it smell like fermenting apples?
I did not tell him the truth. That sweet, cloying odor was the scent of gas gangrene. It was the smell of the grave, claiming a living body inch by inch. In the German medical manuals, the treatment was clear and brutal. There were no miracle cures for the rot. You simply cut it away before it reached the heart. If you were lucky, the patient survived the shock. Most did not. I picked up the saw. The steel caught the candlelight, reflecting a cold, indifferent silver. This was our peak. This was our answer to the problem of death, a blade and a prayer. I had been taught that the Americans would have no answer at all. I imagined them arriving with their crude tools and their lack of discipline, simply shooting the wounded to save themselves the trouble of care. Outside, the world was screaming. The ground shook with the rhythmic thud of artillery, the heavy, blunt hammers of the American advance. I could hear the high-pitched metallic clatter of their tanks, a sound that felt disorganized and frantic compared to the heavy, purposeful rumble of our tigers.
They are coming, are they not? The monsters from the newspapers.
I tried to keep my voice from trembling. I was a major in the medical corps. I was a representative of the Reich. Let them come. They are barbarians who rely on numbers because they lack our spirit. They will find nothing here but a German doctor doing his duty. I positioned the saw. I had no ether left, no morphine, just a leather strap for Lucas to bite on, and my own unwavering belief that our suffering was noble while the enemy's strength was an illusion. The cellar door groaned. Dust drifted down from the ceiling, coating my sterile instruments in a layer of French soil.
Do not let them take me, Doctor. Please, kill me before they get inside.
I looked at the boy, then at the heavy wooden door. I could hear voices now. They did not sound like the guttural monsters of the propaganda films. They sounded young. They sounded tired, but mostly They sounded loud. They shouted with an easy, careless confidence that chilled me to my core. I gripped the saw tighter. I was ready to perform the only mercy I knew. I was ready to cut. I waited for the door to burst open, expecting a grenade or a flamethrower. I expected the end of the world. I expected the Americans to be exactly what I was told they were. Primitives who only understood how to destroy. The cellar door did not just open. It vanished under the weight of a boot. Sunlight poured in, blinding me, and with it came the smell of the invaders. It was not the smell of death. It was the smell of gasoline, tobacco, and something I had not smelled in years. It was the smell of peppermint. The dust was a golden veil between me and my executioners. Through it, the silhouettes of the paratroopers seemed like giants, their helmets bulbous and strange, their bodies laden with belts, bags, and weapons I did not recognize. One of them, a man with a face smeared with charcoal and sweat, leveled his submachine gun at my chest. I dropped the amputation saw. It hit the stone floor with a clatter that sounded to my ears like a funeral bell. I closed my eyes, waiting for the short, sharp burst of lead that would end my service to the Reich.
Put the pop gun down, Miller. Can you not see he is a doctor?
I opened my eyes. A man pushed past the guards. He did not look like the savage Bolsheviks we had been told were coming from the east. Nor did he look like the lazy, undisciplined Americans of our propaganda. He wore a crisp, dark green jacket and a look of intense, clinical focus. He did not look at me as a prisoner. He looked at me as a colleague who was failing at his job. This was Major Julian Rhodes.
You have a lot of blood on your hands, Doctor. Is any of it yours?
I could not speak. I found myself staring at his boots. They were made of thick, high-quality leather, unmarred by the years of scarcity that had turned our own footwear into cardboard and glue. The air in the cellar changed instantly. The smell of rot and tallow was pushed aside by the scent of strong coffee and the sharp, clean tang of menthol. It was the smell of a world that was not starving. It is the boy. He has the gas gangrene. I was about to perform the procedure. There is no other way. Major Rhodes did not look at my saw. He stepped toward the cot where Lucas lay shivering. The American paratroopers stood back, their eyes darting around the cellar. But Rhodes acted as if he were in a quiet hospital in Boston rather than a frontline cellar in Normandy. He knelt beside Lucas, his movements fluid and confident. He did not pull out a pistol. He drew a flashlight from his belt that cast a beam of pure white light, not the sickly, flickering yellow of my single candle.
This leg is a mess. How long has it been like this?
2 days. The infection is moving fast. I must take the leg at the hip. It is the only way to save him. Major Rhodes grunted. It was a sound of absolute dismissal. He reached into a small olive drab bag and pulled out something that looked like a jewel. It was a tiny glass vial, no larger than my thumb. Inside, a strange, murky, yellowish liquid shifted under the white light of his torch. I felt a surge of cold fury. I had read about the Americans. I knew they were masters of chemical warfare and industrial sabotage. What is that filth? Are you so cruel that you cannot even let a boy die in peace? You are poisoning the well. You are injecting him with waste just to watch him suffer.
Be quiet, Doctor. You are living in the 19th century. I am trying to bring you into the 20th.
I lunged forward, but a soldier caught my arm, his grip like iron. I watched in horror as Major Rhodes snapped the top of the glass vial. He drew the yellow water into a glass syringe with a needle so fine it looked like a strand of spider silk. Our needles were thick, blunt things that had been sharpened 1,000 times on whetstones. His was a miracle of precision. You are a monster. You pretend to be a healer, but you bring poison into a sanctuary of the wounded. That liquid is foul. It looks like the drainage from a wound itself. If you kill him with your American experiments, I will tell the world of your barbarism.
Then watch, Doctor. Watch what your German genius missed while you were busy building better ways to kill people.
He leaned over Lucas. The boy groaned as the needle entered his thigh. I waited for the convulsion. I waited for the foam at the mouth, the sudden cardiac arrest, the that surely followed such a primitive injection. I looked at the Major's face. He was not laughing. He was not gloating. He looked like a man who was betting everything on a tiny drop of moldy water. I realized then that I was not looking at a conqueror. I was looking at a man who was fighting a war against death itself, and he was using weapons I had been told did not exist. Major Rhodes pulled the needle from the boy's skin with a practiced flick of his wrist. He looked at me through the haze of blue cigarette smoke that drifted in from the hallway, where his men were already opening tins of something that smelled sweet and rich. I stood frozen, my hands still stained with the dark blood of a surgery I was certain would now be a funeral.
Tell him, Miller. Tell the doctor what we just gave the kid so he stops looking at me like I just handed him a death sentence.
Penicillin. I repeated the word, and it felt like ash in my mouth. It sounded like something out of a medieval herbalist's grimoire, not the precise, sterile world of German chemistry. I looked at the empty vial resting on the wooden crate. Mold? You are telling me you are injecting the boy with bread mold? This is your great American science. It is folklore. It is the desperate superstition of a culture that has no real medicine of its own. You are playing with fire, Major.
It is not folklore, Doctor. It is industrial-scale mercy. We stopped throwing leeches at problems back in the States a long time ago.
I sat on a three-legged stool in the corner of the cellar for 8 hours. I refused to sleep, even as the weight of the war pressed down on my eyelids. I was certain that by 2 a.m, Lucas would begin to seize. I expected his lungs to fill with fluid as his body rejected the American filth. Outside, the world was a cacophony of industrial power. I heard the rhythmic, heavy thrum of American truck engines, hundreds of them, moving with a reckless disregard for fuel consumption. To us, every litre of petrol was a drop of blood. To them, it seemed as common as rainwater. The smell of the cellar changed. The stench of the gas gangrene, that sweet, cloying odour of rotting peaches seemed to be fighting against the sharp, clean scent of the American antiseptics. I watched the shadows dance on the wall, waiting for the boy to die. I prepared the words I would say to his mother. I would tell her he was murdered by an American experiment. When the first grey light of dawn filtered through the high, barred window of the cellar, I stood up. My joints were stiff, and my heart was heavy. I walked to the cot, my hand reaching for his forehead to confirm the heat of the killing fever. I stopped. I did not touch him at first. I simply watched. Lucas was breathing. It was not the shallow, ragged rasp of a dying animal, but the deep, rhythmic rise and fall of true sleep. I reached out and pressed my palm to his skin. It was cool. The sweat that drenched his hair was the sweat of a fever broken, not the clammy moisture of the end.
Check the site, Doctor. See for yourself before you start writing my court-martial.
I peeled back the bandage with trembling fingers. The sight defied every law of medicine I had been taught at the University of Heidelberg. The black, spiderweb veins of the gas gangrene had not reached his groin. They were fading. The angry, purple swelling had retreated, leaving behind skin that was pink and living. The rot was losing. I looked up at the Major, my world tilting on its axis. He didn't say a word. He simply reached down and kicked open a heavy wooden crate that sat near the stairs. Inside, nestled in protective shavings, were hundreds of those little glass vials. Hundreds of them. We had the Tiger tanks. We had the V2 rockets. We had the finest optics and the sharpest steel in the history of man. But as I looked at that crate of yellow water, I realized the terrifying truth of the war we had started. We were fighting a nation that had learned how to mass-produce life itself in a glass jar. My Reich was built on the precision of the saw, but these primitives had mastered the magic of the cure. Major Julian Rhodes did not wait for me to recover from my shock. He simply grabbed the front of my tunic, which was stiff with the dried blood of a dozen failed surgeries, and pulled me toward the stairs of the cellar. He did not speak with the cruelty of a conqueror, but with the weary impatience of a foreman who had too much work and too few hands. When we emerged from the damp, suffocating dark of the cellar into the morning light of Normandy, the world I thought I knew was gone. I stood on the threshold of the farmhouse, my eyes squinting against the glare, and I felt the foundations of my entire life crumble into the mud. Our propaganda ministers had told us that the Americans were a soft people. They told us that the United States was a disorganized rabble of different races and creeds, who would fold the moment they faced the iron discipline of the German soldier. They called them the mongrel nation. They said they were a people of gadgets and jazz music, lacking the spiritual depth and the warrior heart of the Reich. But as I looked down the road that led toward the beaches, I did not see a rabble. I saw an industrial monster that had been awakened and was now breathing fire across the French countryside. The road was choked with vehicles. I saw heavy trucks by the hundreds, their engines roaring with a power that seemed infinite. There were jeeps darting like dragonflies between the massive columns of tanks. I looked at the tires of those trucks. They were thick, high-quality rubber. My own unit had been using wooden wheels or scavenged tires that were worn down to the wire. Here, the very mud was being crushed by a wealth of resources I could not comprehend.
Do not just stand there catching flies with your mouth open, Doctor. We have a triage station set up in the barn. My medical officer was killed during the drop on the 6th of June. I need a man who knows how to stitch, even if he did learn it from the wrong side of the fence.
Why would you let me touch your men? I am the enemy.
You are a doctor. And right now, I have got 20 boys in that barn who do not care about your politics. They just want to see the sun go down tonight. Besides, Miller here will be standing right behind you with a loaded carbine. You make one wrong move with a scalpel, and you will be a patient yourself.
I followed him to the barn. Inside, the smell was not the smell of a German field hospital. In our hospitals, the dominant scent was always gangrene, unwashed bodies, and the sharp chemical tang of low-grade disinfectants that never quite did the job. This barn smelled like a laboratory. It smelled of strong soap, fresh linen, and something sweet that I could not identify. It was the smell of American abundance. Major Julian Rhodes pointed to a long wooden table where a young American soldier lay. His uniform was torn, and his leg was a mess of shrapnel and dirt. Near the table sat a crate of supplies that had been dropped by parachute. I walked over to the crate, and I felt my breath hitch in my chest. I saw rolls of white gauze, so clean and soft, they looked like silk. I saw bottles of alcohol that were 99% pure, and there, sitting on top of a pile of green ration tins, was a loaf of bread. I reached out and touched it. It was wrapped in clear paper. It was white. It was so white, it looked like a cloud. In Germany, we had been eating heavy, dark bread made with sawdust and potato flour for years. This bread was soft. I pressed my finger into it, and it sprang back like a sponge. I looked at Major Julian Rhodes, and my hands began to shake. I realized then that we had lost the war. We had lost it not because our soldiers were not brave, and not because our engineers were not clever. We had lost because we were fighting a nation that could afford to send white bread and glass vials of magic mold across an entire ocean.
It is just bread, Doctor. Wash your hands and get to work.
We worked for 14 hours straight. I stood side by side with the American medics, men who treated me with a strange professional distance. They did not spit on me. They did not call me names. They simply handed me instruments and held the lanterns steady while I worked. At noon, a sergeant brought in a box of oranges. He sliced them with a combat knife and handed the pieces around. I had not seen an orange in 3 years. The juice ran down my chin, and the taste was so vibrant, so full of life, that I had to turn away so the Americans would not see the tears in my eyes. I was a surgeon of the master race, and I was being fed like a king by the people I had been told were primitives. Late in the afternoon, they brought in 3 German prisoners. They were boys, no older than 18, from a coastal defense unit. They were terrified. When they saw me in my German uniform working alongside the Americans, their eyes went wide with confusion. One of them, a boy named Hans, with a shattered shoulder, began to scream when an American medic approached him with a needle. He shrieked that the Americans were going to poison him, that they were going to inject him with liquid lead. I stepped forward and took the boy's hand. I looked him in the eye, and I spoke in our own tongue, my voice cracking with the weight of my own realization. Be quiet, Hans. They are not poisoning you. They are giving you something we do not have. They are giving you the future. I watched the penicillin enter the boy's vein. I saw the same miracle I had seen with Lucas. The fever that was beginning to take hold of him seemed to vanish before it could even start. By the time the sun began to set over the Norman hedgerows, my hands were cramped and my mind was a blur of exhaustion. I walked out of the barn and found Major Julian Rhodes sitting on the bumper of a jeep, staring at a small photograph in his wallet. You have saved many lives today, Major. Not just your own men, but mine as well.
It is a strange business, Doctor. One day I am trying to blow a hole in your line, and the next I am sharing my lunch with you so you have the strength to fix a shoulder.
Why do you do it? Why do you bring so much medicine? Why not just the bombs?
Because the bombs only win the ground. The medicine wins what comes after. My father told me once that you can tell the character of a man by what he does when he has all the power. We have the power, Doctor. We chose to bring the cure.
I looked at him, and I saw a man who was not driven by the fanatical hatred that had been poured into my ears since I was a child. He was driven by a quiet, industrial-strength decency. Many years have passed since that day in the barn. The ruins of the Reich were cleared away, and a new Germany rose from the ashes. I returned to my practice in Heidelberg, but I was never the same man. The steel tools I used for the rest of my life were no longer the finest in the world to me. I knew that the true strength of a nation was not found in the sharpness of its blades, but in the reach of its mercy. It is now 1964. I am an old man, and my hands are no longer steady enough for the theatre of surgery. I sit in my study, surrounded by books and the quiet peace of a country that has forgotten the sound of falling bombs. On my desk, there is a photograph. It was sent to me 10 years ago. It shows a man standing in a field of wheat, holding a young girl on his shoulders. The man is tall and strong, and he is walking on 2 healthy legs. It is Lucas. He wrote to me that he still remembers the smell of the American oranges. He told me that his daughter is studying to be a biologist. She wants to find the next miracle, the next mold that will save the world. Every time I look at that photograph, I think of Major Julian Rhodes. I think of the little glass vial of yellow water. I spent the first half of my life believing that power was the ability to destroy, to conquer, and to amputate. I believed that the saw was the ultimate symbol of a doctor's authority over the flesh. But I was wrong. The Americans taught me that the greatest power on this earth is the power to preserve. They did not break my spirit with their artillery, though it was vast. They broke my hatred with a piece of white bread and a needle. I look at my old surgical saw, now resting in a display case at the medical school. It is a relic of a time when we thought the only way to save the body was to cut it apart. I am glad I was conquered. I am glad I was shown the miracle of the mold, because in that damp cellar in Normandy, I did not just see a boy's leg saved. I saw the death of a dark age and the birth of a world where we choose the medicine over the blade. The war was won by the tanks and the planes, yes, but the peace was won by a different kind of steel. The steel of a needle, the steel of a man's resolve to be kind, and the simple yellow magic of a life grown in a jar. The characters, incidents, and dialogue in this video are dramatized for narrative and entertainment effect. While some events may be inspired by real-life themes, this story is a work of fiction.